Brendan, you probably didn't grow up vegan, is that correct?
Right, yeah. I became vegan when I was around 15, and I was running track in high school, and I just wanted to be a better athlete, so I was trying different ways to boost my performance, and after looking at some of the top athletes training programs, I realized they really didn't differ much from the average athletes training program, so clearly there's something else going on other than training that allows some athletes to become great while others remained average. So I found it had to do with rate of recovery, the rate at which you can get your body to regenerate and renew itself after exercise. So that became my focus, was speed and recovery, and I found that nutrition played a huge part in that, so that led me to trying different ways of eating, and one of the things on the list was a vegan diet that at first didn't work. I was hungry and tired all the time, and it wasn't going well, but then I figured out how to do it properly. A lot of trial and error, I made common mistakes, too much refined food and that kind of thing, but once I got it right, it really, definitely, I can say, has a significant benefit from an athletic point of view.
The part of getting it right, would you say it was going more to whole foods as opposed to refined?
Yeah, that's absolutely it. I was eating, the joke was that I became a starchitarian, not a vegetarian, because I was eating so many starchy foods, and bread, and pasta, and rice, and all that, and then I started eating more whole foods, more vegetables, fruit vegetables, and things like quinoa, amaranth, buckwheat, wild rice, all the pseudo grains, and yeah, the difference was significant for sure, even including things like hemp and chia and flax and different types of foods that weren't really that well known then, but are much better known now. So that made a big difference.
Did anyone suggest to you, or did you come upon this yourself, or?
Yeah, for me, as far as that, I don't actually remember. I think that it was just trial and error. I was just going down the list, trying different ways of eating, because I was convinced that good nutrition would allow me to recover more quickly, which would allow me to train more, which of course would boost my performance. So I think it was just next on the list, and I tried it, and then found what I was not doing right, and started getting it better, and I saw little glimmers of hope along the way, and that encouraged me to pursue it further.
So you brought up a good point about recovery. How do you decide when to eat when you're working out? Before, after, amount, time before, or time after? I'm sure you figured all this out. What would you advise someone, maybe, not perhaps an iron triathlete like you?
General rule is you want carbohydrate before and during, because that's for fuel. That's what your body burns as a fuel source, and more protein after, because that's for rebuilding and repair. So just easily digestible carbs, fruit is great. I make the energy bars, the recipes are in my book for that. Very easy to make. They're date-based, which of course is a carbohydrate. And how this gets a little tricky is that the fitter you get, the less fuel you actually need, because the more efficient your body becomes. So it's always moving. It's never fixed. So you can't just say eat this amount of food for this distance of race, because there's so many variables. One major one that's often overlooked is just simply fitness level. It's just like, a more fuel efficient car can go further on a smaller amount of fuel, and it's the same with the human body. The top marathoners in the world who run 2:05 or now even 2:03 just drink water throughout the race, whereas someone new to a marathon would drink 17, or had taken 17 energy gels, or a whole bunch of carbohydrate during the race, because they burn through it so quickly because their body's inefficient at moving itself. So training contributes to becoming more efficient, and a good diet helps speed the rate at which that efficiency improves. So they work hand in hand for sure, but the goal is to obviously become more efficient, which will then reduce the amount you need to take in, which is also then going to reduce the odds of any kind of stomach upset or anything when you're taking less fuel during the workout.
Oh, that's interesting. So when you're talking about protein afterward, how long afterward? Like, would you wait an hour after you have a good workout to eat, or is it okay right away?
Yeah, it's good right away. Within 45 minutes after, it's ideal, and not just protein, but about a 4-to-1 ratio of carbohydrate to protein. So for every 4 grams of carbohydrate, you want 1 of protein. So if you mix some hemp protein or some vega or something like that with something that's some sugar, that's good sugar, like juice, or blend it with a banana, which of course has fructose, which is a form of sugar, or blueberries, or coconut water, anything like that is going to be a really good recovery drink.
You mentioned the word vega, and would you just mention exactly what that is.
Yeah, Vega is something that, it's a formula that I developed for myself back when I was around 15, when I was trying to get good nutrition, and it's evolved a lot over the years. It's changed a lot since then, but in 2004 we brought it out as a product. So it's kind of an all-in-one: protein, essential fats, fiber, greens, enzymes, probiotics, all that. So yeah, just definitely good, quick, convenient nutrition.
I loved reading in your literature also, you said obesity and malnutrition is very common, and you wouldn't think that if someone's eating so much food, they must be getting an awful lot of nutrients.
Right.
But they're not. And then overconsumption of calorie-rich but nutrient-poor describes that as well.
Exactly, the standard American diet is exactly that: very high in calories, very low in nutrition. And nutrition, of course, we're speaking about micronutrients, so vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, antioxidants, that chemically turn off your hunger signal, so you're not constantly hungry because your body has what it needs and it tells you you can stop eating. Whereas, white bread, for example, you can eat that all day long. Your stomach will physically be full, but you're going to keep craving food because it doesn't have the nourishment. So then, of course, that leads to overconsumption and weight gain, and then risk factor increase for type 2 diabetes and arthritis, osteoporosis, cardiovascular disease, all these things. So being overfed and undernourished is the American way, unfortunately, now. But eating these nutrient-dense plant-based whole foods, that's one of the things that it cures just automatically, is you just don't need to keep consuming, and you just stop because you don't want to eat anymore. You're full. Yeah,
because you feel fulfilled.
Right.
We live in an extremely stressful world, and even if you eat well, we still have to deal with stress. And I was interested to see how much you talk about stress, which I don't think a lot of people do. In a lot of the books I've read on nutrition, I find that just wonderful that you address that. And so, how do you see that playing in most commonly with how we handle our diet?
Yeah, I think stress nutritionally has been overlooked greatly. Obviously, as North Americans, we have a lot of stress. It can be work-related, family-related, breathing polluted air, psychological stress, all kinds of things. But nutrition is a huge one. Not getting enough nutrients is a form of nutritional stress. You're depriving your body of nutrition, and the physiological response is the same to any other stress. So cortisol, the stress hormone, goes up, which makes it physiologically impossible to get into a deep phase of sleep called delta, that as North Americans, most of us never get into. So we wake up, we're still tired, we crave coffee and sugar, which does work, it does give us energy right away, but it's through stimulation, it's not through nourishment. So it's treating the symptom of fatigue, it's not treating the cause. To treat the cause, we have to lower cortisol by lowering stress, then we sleep deeply, we wake up more fresh and rested. And as I was very happy to find when I was researching this, that the average North American, of his or her total stress, 40% of that can be attributed to poor nutrition. So that's overwhelming, but that's great because we all make choices as to what we're going to eat. We all, have control over such a large part of our stress, and that to me was very reassuring that we could actually eradicate such a large portion of our overall stress, and therefore the symptoms of it, of course, by just changing what we eat and eating those nutrient-dense plant-based whole foods.
You mentioned that we all have a choice. I noticed that most of us don't operate as though we have a choice. I think we go more by habit and familiarity, and like anything, it seems as though people have to really want to consciously make a shift before that can happen, or they have to become very ill and be scared into doing it. And so, how do you feel about some of these transitional products like hamburgers, hot dogs? Now that I think of it, I know it's refined food, but or processed food, but don't you think that sometimes it's what it takes to get people on their way?
Absolutely, yeah. I think tofu hot dogs, tofu hamburgers, soy ice cream, they have their part. As you say, they're highly processed, they're quite acid forming. No, they're definitely not health food, but they do play a role transitioning people off the standard American diet, absolutely. So if you're eating a highly processed plant-based diet, it's not great, but it's a lot better than standard American diet, and it is a great stepping stone. And I've seen many people have success with that. It's taken them it may be a year to fully transition to a healthy plant-based whole food diet, but they've been eating a standard American diet for 4 decades. They can't expect it to happen overnight.
Right.
So I think patience, and I think using those transitional foods for that very reason helps, absolutely.
You also talk about our carbon footprint, now that we take it outside our own body, but how what we choose every single meal and with every single bite on the end of our fork, we determine how the environment is going to remain. It sounds like a grandiose statement, but it's true.
It is, yeah, absolutely. When I was researching my most recent book, it's called Whole Foods to Thrive in Canada. It's called Thrive Foods in the United States, and I was fascinated by it. It was a very enjoyable book to write because the research I was doing was it was really shocking. Just the impact that our food choices can have on natural resources, land, water, fossil fuel, and the CO2 emissions created. And staggering things like, for example, if one person cut out his or her breakfast and replaced a standard American breakfast with a plant-based whole food smoothie for 1 year, it would save the equivalent of CO2 emissions as driving from Vancouver, BC to Tijuana, Mexico in a mid-sized car that gets 26 miles per gallon. So that's one person, one meal. So that's obviously significant. Now, if everyone, of course, this isn't realistic, but just to show the scope of numbers, if everyone in North America made that switch, it would save the equivalent of driving distance, same mid-sized car, to the moon and back 9 million times. So just a staggering thing.
It is staggering.
People look at automobiles as big polluters, and sure, they do pollute a lot. You see smog over Los Angeles and other cities like that, and it's very tangible. We have this relationship with cars, we put gas in and we see tailpipe emissions, but we don't see that with food. So it's somewhat kind of removed from our consciousness, and I think just kind of putting things into perspective that way and relating it to the automobile and other things that we're more familiar with and how they relate to the environment is what I've tried to do in the most recent book, just to get across the impact that food choices have on the environment and how small changes in each of our diets can make a big difference down the road. 1, 2, 3 years down the road, what we do can really pile up, and if others start following suit, it's going to change things. It will change. So to me, it was very encouraging that we do actually have a lot of power. It's great to be involved politically and that sort of thing too, but just simply by making different food choices, we're helping.
Our young people are probably going to be our biggest hope, because they will have more of a chance to consider all this, because they're also learning about foods and animal rights and that sort of thing in school. And I'm just so surprised how our young are making up such a big majority of people adopting a plant-based diet.
Well, and I think it's necessary for the health of our nation, but also the health of our economy. We're it's in kind of a bad state right now where we subsidize the sickness in a sense. The meat and dairy industry is heavily subsidized. The amount of natural resources it uses to produce food, it would be so expensive if it was true market value. A hamburger would be anywhere from $35 to $150 for a hamburger, because the amount of fossil fuel that goes into to produce that. And of course, it's not. It's it's $1, it's $2. So that's a subsidy that we as taxpayers pay, and then we subsidize the reactive healthcare system to try and treat the symptoms of the problems that we've created by allowing this cheap, unhealthy food to be accessible to everyone. So we're creating the problem, and then we're creating a temporary solution, and we're all paying for it with our tax dollars. So economically, it's not good. It's not good for us from a health perspective, obviously.
No, absolutely not.
So it needs to change. So young people, obviously, they're the ones who are going to have to carry it through. But it's up to us to provide this information, and not in a preachy way or anything, but just the facts. It's like, here you go. This is when you buy this sort of food. This is what's involved. When you buy this sort, this is what's involved. And just get to know. Go and I think we should be in class in school. Kids go and see where the food comes from. We're the fortunate ones who do get to eat every day, and I think with that privilege comes, I'd like to think somewhat of a responsibility that we are going to make informed choices, and we do know what we're voting for when we're buying certain things. So we need to pass that on.
Do you have an example of somebody that you really truly feel that you might have saved their life. If not their life, at least their way of living.
I have had people come to my talks, you know, and every once in a while you get this really touching story, and they'll show me before and after pictures, and how, like, there's this one guy I'm thinking of at the moment who was, you know, eating standard American diet for 4.5 decades, and his doctor said, look, you know, you're gonna die, you gotta do something, and he kept trying these other diets that he wasn't sticking with. They were good diets, but he just couldn't make the change. And then over time he gradually became a plant-based food eater, and now, you know, he lost 135 pounds, his cholesterol is normal, and the exciting thing is that he craves a big salad every night and not a steak that's covered in cheese like he used to. And that's just because his palate has changed. He was systematic, he was methodical, and he put in the effort up front, and then his palate changed and everything got easier. So it's not an effort for him. That's the thing, a lot of people think they're going to be deprived, but if they do it gradually, their palate will change and they're not going to feel deprived. It's just a change. So hearing things like that to me is very encouraging, and you know, he's changed his life for sure. So yeah, things like that, you know, it means a lot to me.
I would really love you to say the best website for everyone to get everything they need to know about Brendan Brazier.
Well, yeah, my website, brendanbrazier.com, so BrendanBrazier. There's a free online program I put together. It's called Thrive in 30, so thrive in the number 30.com. And it's just a free resource. You get these little video segments that I filmed and edited myself. It's based on my book. So some people learn better visually, obviously, and they're not going to make the commitment. And this is what I realized, you know, is that as good as books are, not everyone's going to read them. And the people who need the information the most, ironically, are usually the least likely to take the initiative to read the book. So I put out this little web series in an attempt to try and get this information to people who aren't going to read the book, which is probably a lot of people. So that's available as well. And I've got some good feedback on that, so that can be a resource for anyone who wants it.
If you're hanging out one day and you're in your where you live, and you're feeling really hungry, and you seem to have everything you need for your very, very favorite go-to dish, what would that be?
Oh, that's a good question. There's so many things I like. It depends the time of season. It depends how I'm feeling. No one thing specifically. In the fall, I like a lot of root vegetables. More so, I find that are in season. There's kombucha squash and sage butter, which of course is made with coconut oil, not like cow's butter or anything. But it's really, really good with wild rice. That's a recipe in the new book as well. That's one of my favorites for sure. I really like smoothies, chocolate smoothies with coconut water on a hot summer day as well. Some of the ice cream too. Like what is
your recipe for that?
I usually just use Vega Health Optimizer with coconut water.
One of your shakes.
Yeah. So that works really well. Watermelon, you know, that's one of my favorites in the summer too.
Mine too. Yeah. So do you have friends in for holiday dinners and that sort of thing? How do you translate that into a vegan meal? But and we know that's not necessary. We have to let go of some of those options as well, especially if we're not doing the transitional processed foods at the same time. But is there any dish that you think of as for special occasions, or something that you look forward to?
No, you know, if I go over to someone's house for dinner, I'll make one or two recipes, and then they can try it and see what they think, and then I'll end up eating most of that myself usually, but at least I have something to eat at their house and I don't look too weird by not eating anything. But yeah, and you know, a lot of people have vegetables with their meal and stuff, so it's something that's always available.
How do you handle eating out?
And the good thing about eating out is that most restaurants do have good salads. They do have some, you know, they'll have basic things like rice and avocado, stuff like that. So you can get basic stuff. Because I graze throughout the day, I'm usually not really hungry by dinner. So eating you know, salad or two salads and some rice and steamed vegetables and avocado usually is fine.
Very good. But thank you so much, and I hope that lots of people will tune into your website because there's just a wealth of information there.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I'm glad you like it. And yeah, good luck with your new book and all your previous books too.
Oh, thank you.